Hey guys, hey,
How's it going?
and everybody watching. This is Life of a Seer. It's episode number 5, and of course, the scenery looks quite a little bit different today because Malvina is not being able to be with us. She's just had a surgical procedure that just she's recovering from, and so I have. Two of my really close, great, dear friends, both from Texas. So we have Corey and Daniel. We've known each other, been in a relationship for a number of years, and we're also directors of King Development Group USA. So we've known each other. Both of you guys are seers, and you're going to be
Mhm.
talking about exactly what this is all life of a seer. So it's really great to have you two along. I've been excited. I've been excited about not excited that Malvina's not able to do it because I miss her. And
Better
she
clear
would
that
love to
up.
be on this call. She'd love to be on this call with us. And but I've been excited about us being together because I know what it's like when we're together. Like there's a synergy. We've ministered in
hmm
different states and different places, and it's been a whole lot of fun. So welcome, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for
thanks
having
for
us.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Daniel, of course, is not new to any of Insight now because we do Kingdom Thoughts together with Tim. And Corey, I think you've been on with you were on with Peter at some stage, were you, or Peter and Chris?
Yeah, with Peter a few times.
Yeah. So great to see you. Great to see you guys. Great to be here. Great to be on this. And so we may as well dive right into a discussion about life of a seer and some
Mm.
things that you've learnt and some things that have been challenges over the years. And we'll see how that goes. So maybe if I can ask you the question, how does it operate for you? I mean, what are the sorts of things that you're able to operate in that prophetic area of being a seer? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Danny.
All right, Daniel.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's Corey. It's always me first. Anyway, uh, well, I'd say like operating as a seer, I'm definitely really strong on the emotional part, on feelings. That's probably the strongest area
Hmm.
that I see in.
Hmm.
Atmospheres, feeling atmospheres, what's going on around me. Sometimes can be as simple as passing a person and just feeling emotional pain, loss, anger. Just being in the presence of some people, picking some things up. Um,
So
so
has
yeah,
that
I
been
mean
easy?
that's.
Has that been easy for you? Operating in that, or
No, I mean, you kind of got to go back, just a quick snippet of, when I was really young, I was more seeing natural with my eyes. I had
hmm
no grade for that, demonic things like that. Just really didn't. But I've always been emotional as a child. Um, I was always considered kind of a weakling, but and so definitely amongst peers, boys, groups of boys, it was a little harder to fit into those as we watched movies, I cried, and
hmm
everybody wanted to know why I was crying. There's all those small issues like that, or picking on somebody and having that bothering me different than it did everybody else. So there was a lot of those,
so
and then.
so ha- so just so people get a bit of an idea
Mhm.
of you. I mean, you're not. You, how tall are you?
6'3".
So 6'3", so you tower above it, but you're a general contractor, right? So
Yes, sir. Mhm.
yeah, so you're not sort of, and so living in that arena of being a contractor, sort of like
Mhm.
a man's man sort of a arena.
Yeah.
That must have been a little bit difficult.
Yeah, it was. One of the things that really happened is that I wanted to fit in into those groups of guys. It is kind of a rougher group of
Hmm.
guys, and I naturally went into that job field because my dad owned a business in that area, and
Hmm.
so that's just kind of what I went into is when I got into my later teen years. And
Hmm.
I learned that emotions can be channeled in a couple different ways. And so I learned to cope with it by taking hurt and channel it into aggression or anger, which of course then put me on the top of the totem pole
Hmm.
with the groups of guys because I was the one that was willing to say hurt the person the worst because
Hmm.
I just learned that that's what made me feel better. So when somebody said something that hurt me, if I could hurt them more, there was some kind of relief from
Hmm.
that pain.
Hmm.
So yeah, so is and then more recently, you asked like what life's like. I've had to learn even how to go into Walmart. Because my wife can tell you that we go into Walmart 20 minutes in, I'm like, we got to go home. Like I'm irritated, I'm tired. There's so many people in here. Every one of them I pass I just can't do it. It's the atmosphere is just hard,
Hmm.
physically draining, emotionally draining.
Hmm.
So I've had to learn how um, to see those things to understand what they are and where they're coming from, not
So,
react to them.
so how have you learnt? What have you? How have you learnt those? So we'll get to you in a minute, Corey. But how have you learnt?
Um, you know, I mean, really, we got to talk about our relationship a little bit, Mark. About 3 years ago, you sat me down and started asking me questions, and you just told me, you said, "You're a prophet, you're a seer," and I had no
Hmm.
good for that either, and was like, "What are we taught?" And it relieved a lot of pressure from me to understand that I wasn't broken or I didn't have problems. Um, and so that's really where my journey of coping with it started, not in aggression or anger, but started more towards, um, you know, uh, understanding that I'm be angry and I don't. It really, really, what I learned is when I don't understand something, it's usually not just natural.
Hmm.
Like maybe I'm angry or irritated and I'm like, "Oh, why am I angry or irritated?" And like nobody said something mean to me. I just don't understand what's going on. So really it was when I learned to start separating what was me and what was the atmosphere around me that I was picking up on, to what I was
Hmm.
seeing emotionally or physically. Is really really when the journey started changing around for me about actually coping with it.
Cool. Well, we'll come back to some more stuff in relation to that. But
Mhm.
Corey, um, I know that you don't do all that well with sitting back and not saying anything much. But how does that operate for you, Corey? How does it, how do you operate in the seer?
So for me, I'll see pictures or images of certain things, and I usually see in a process of order, whenever
Hmm.
things are supposed to be lined up a certain way. So whenever I see something, then I can see the display of where they're missing and how they should be fit back together. Whether it's business or a person's life that Father will show me. Um, and in seeing those things, like as especially younger, not understanding what my authority is when I see all those types of things and understanding boundaries, even
Hmm.
other people's authorities and not overrunning those things. Um, that was a real lesson I had to learn because it created a lot of strife within myself. It would create a lot of strife with other people. It would rob me and make me go through a lot of like depression and that type of stuff because there's something I can see,
Mhm.
but I can't do anything about it. And I can tell you one of the main things, especially younger, that I struggled with was when I saw the things out of order or people, say, for example, like Daniel, if someone were messing with Daniel and I saw what was happening from the spirit side of it, one, it would make me frustrated because of I wanted the truth, I wanted the righteousness and the freedom to really take place. But then control would set in, me not realizing it, because now I began to try to control this situation and this person because I didn't like what they were doing to someone else. And
Hmm.
so learning that freedom that comes with that authority and understanding and honoring people and not letting control step over me and actually cause destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So as my younger age, I didn't see a lot of emotion. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
emotion that was in my household was hidden. It was hidden a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So for me, I was like, you don't cry, you don't do all these things. And so my only outlet was like, okay, well then I'm supposed to demonstrate it through, well, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do what I tell you to do, then we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So
So has that changed for you, or have you become more aware of that, or are you still dealing with some of those things?
for the understanding of where my authority lies, where my domains are when I'm placed in a certain business or area,
Mm-hmm.
that I've been learning probably really in depth over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. Um, Knowing how to see the people that God's placed in their area, whether if I'm under them or in that business, and how to honor that. So if I see something in their area of responsibility, how do I go about in relationship with them, communicating that, not taking that on myself?
Mm-hmm.
Because that would rob me in the past of my excellence for my
Mm-hmm.
role, and then I would negate that from actually doing my part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yep. So, of course, you growing up in, you were an athlete, right?
that's correct.
Yeah. So, what sports?
So I played baseball, football, and basketball, and then went on to play collegiate baseball and professional baseball.
Okay. Okay. Um, so, we were talking about before this about, a tendency, when you see something or have this ability to be able to see it, you want to fix it, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us about, how that's operated for you. What's been the growth point or the challenge?
I think that the biggest challenge with me is not knowing I didn't have to. Um, just because
Mm-hmm.
I saw it, I didn't have to do it. There was
Yep.
times where God was wanting to teach me and show me and give me understanding and use it as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take off and run with it in the way that I thought it had to. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
lead back to the performance thing, especially being younger playing sports. If you didn't perform, you didn't play,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my identity wrapped up in those sports, and if I didn't do so, whenever I saw those things start to happen, then I'm like, well, I have to do something about it. And if I don't, then something's going to happen, or I'm gonna lose something. So when I reached that transition, when the Lord sat me down, I was like, listen, like, I'm showing you this just because you're as a son. I just want to show you what I'm thinking or what's on my heart, not asking you to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And being okay with that. That was real hard at first for me to be okay with allowing something to stay out of order.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but understanding responsibility and what my authority is and who God else has placed it, it made that understanding much different so that I could detach that. Like, that's not been given to me. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the Father wanted me to say something or do something, then that's different. But that really set me in peace to walk in a lot more rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we talk about with seers that they have a tendency to become locked into something, obsessed with something. Have you guys ever felt that?
No, never. Um, y- that I think I was actually going to say, I think that all seers, all three of us here probably can say the same thing or experience the same thing, and I think that's probably something that's pretty standard for most seers, is that we see something, and so we go after it, or we push for it, or like we sometimes will change the way we're living or things like that, which we could call obsession. It's like we'll actually change the way we're doing something or the way we're living because we're like, well, I see that thing, and sometimes it doesn't always come around the way we seen it,
Mm-hmm.
or I think more often than not everybody around us doesn't see it the same way,
Yep.
which puts you the odd man out. And I think that's where a lot of times, like for me, the
Mm-hmm.
obsession comes is I'm like, well, everybody can't see it, but I can see it, and so I got to make this thing happen. And there's nobody really helping or coming along with that journey sometimes.
Yep. Um, Malvina has introduced and talked about the fact is that it seems to be in the number of people that she's talked to
Mm-hmm.
that many seers have had traumatic births, or something's happened area of child in childhood to sort of take out
Mm-hmm.
seers. That happened to you, Daniel.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple things that happened to me. So, yeah, my mom. So I was a C-section, her first child. I ended up being a C-section due to her
Hmm.
being in labor for 30 hours and
Hmm.
not able to have me. So there was some other complications there, but I was 6 years old. I had a stroke, and so went through that, and it was 10 years of some pretty serious attempts, which was interesting, is in my family at that time, my brother was born during the time I had a stroke 6 years later, and they tried to get my parents to abort him. And then he was born in the hospital for a couple of months because he was his um, organs hadn't grown as fast as his body. And so
Hmm.
actually, we were both in the hospital at the same time. I had had a stroke, and my brother was born and had this problem. And
Hmm.
he's also a seer, and so it was just interesting that that took place in our family,
Yeah,
like that. So yeah.
yeah, and I think you told me some time ago that
Mm.
your mother had an encounter with an angel as to your name.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She said that an angel visitor was floating above her bed and told her that she was to name me Daniel Cole, and then obviously my last name being Davison.
Hmm.
And so yeah. So anyway, yeah, I was there's something I would like to say as we're touching on that.
Hmm.
Like, hey, parents out there, you could possibly have a seer as a child, and um, there's a lot there. Like my mom, I tell people, I'm like, man, I was a hellion of a kid. I was strong-willed, very emotional, but that can come out in anger very easy, especially being a child, and and so. Uh, Excuse me. So yeah, anyway, I think the childhood is the hardest part for a seer, most of the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm. Very cool. So, how did you how did you really come to understand that you had this ability? It was. I mean, we've talked about through childhood, but when did there come a realization of this? Because a lot of people grow up not recognizing or not realizing. Like we've touched on here today. But when did that happen for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing. I didn't know what it was, but probably, um, so uh, I lived kind of the party life for a little while when I was in my early 20s, and I had this. I told people I could do open heart surgery. So. Um, all kinds of things, supernatural, I was special, like all these thoughts were going around in my head. So I would say probably like 1920s when I really started picking up on a couple different things. One being that people would just talk to me. I could be standing in line at a grocery store, they'd turn around, just start telling me my dad died last week, and they're just dumping their life on me. And I'm like, who are you? What are you doing? And they would even say, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Um, and because I'm an emotional seer, somebody could sit down next to me. Parties, people get a little bit of alcohol and then they sit down and they start truth telling. And I could just feel the pain. They're telling me about their dad who doesn't love them, or they're telling me about their boyfriend who left them, or whatever it is. And so I had this ability to be much more sensitive towards their situation, which then also paired with my prophetic gifting, where I seemed like I always had the right words to give them. And so, I didn't realize that was prophetic and the whole seeing thing during that time. But, uh, also with the seeing deal is, I used to rub it in people's faces because people would say like, oh, my sister's gonna date this guy, and I would say, no, she's not gonna date him. It's gonna fall apart, and blah blah. And then they'd come back and be like, that's exactly what happened. I'm like, see, I told you. like, and so I would say like 17, 18, right in there forward. I noticed it, but it wasn't
Yep.
until my late 20s that I knew what it was.
So Corey, what about you?
I didn't realize until I was probably 22. I was in college when I had a traumatic accident. I actually broke my arm in half, went through a whole deal, was paralyzed, and ended up having a face-to-face encounter with the Lord and healed me. But at that point in time, I didn't understand. I would always be put in positions of leadership, not realizing why. And I was always in conflict a lot. Like it didn't matter kind of where I went. It seemed like the person who that was their territory was always coming at me.
Yep.
And so like in my younger age, I was always fighting, it seemed like, everywhere I went. So and noticing those things now that I look back and like I understood what was upon my life, but it didn't take till that traumatic event till really started. I actually had an encounter with the Father. He started working on who I was, and that was a 3-year long process and really unsewing a lot of hurt and things in the past, and truly knowing who I am in Him, what that looks like. And then at that point, I was literally just hearing what God was telling me and following. I wasn't reading and those type of things, and I started dreaming things that I'd normally not done before. And so during that time was when He started bringing me kind of more into that, and then into the scriptures of things that I started experiencing. He was, attaching the word to it, and I'm like, man, this makes a lot of sense, And so it was probably 22, 23 for me.
So you both are married, right?
Yes.
You have kids?
Married for 8 years, got 3 kids.
Yeah, I'm 11 years, 3 kids, so it took me a little longer on the kids.
Okay. So are you noticing any traits with your kids? Some of the things that...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what does that look like, and sort of what things are you learning to do with your kids? Corey?
All right.
The first thing that I noticed with my daughter, so she's a seer. She was probably 3, and just one day we were at her house. She normally never had a problem with going to the back of the house, and then just one day she starts walking and she stops dead in her tracks and just stands there. And I'm like, sweetheart, like, what's wrong? She goes, I don't want to go back there. And I'm like, why not? She goes, I'm afraid to go back there. I'm like, okay, something's odd, something's off, right? And so then, as this point, this was still, I'm still kind of maturing a lot and understand what I see, but from the authority standpoint, and I was like, okay, Lord, like through wisdom, show me what's going on here, because I didn't think at 3 years old, right, that they're seeing what they're seeing. So He just started to describe to me, the spirit, like the demonic stuff that she started seeing that would make her afraid to go back there, and so I just started asking, okay, how do I walk through this with her? And at first, because she started having night terrors after that. So she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, and it's like I couldn't even wake her up. Like I'm trying to talk to her and wake her up, and she's just not waking up. And so at one point, the Lord was like, okay, go ahead and tell it to stop. So from my authority, I was like, okay, this is my house, so we're not going to continue this on for now. So it stopped for a little while. Then it came back, and I was like, okay, Lord, why does it keep coming back? And so he's like, well, there's a partnership with her to choose to remove that from her room, right? Because I've given her room, which is technically her domain. But I have the ultimate authority of the house. But in that moment, so it would bother her. I say, so one night she woke up and she was talking to me. I was like, where is it? And she could point to it. And I was like, okay, well then let's deal with that. So I just encourage her, just with the Lord, to tell it to leave. You have the authority to leave. This is your room. And she didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay. And so I left it at that. So the next night she did the same thing. I was like, do you want to say to it? She goes, no, I don't. I said, okay. The third night though, finally, she woke up and I started praying over her in tongues. She then literally looked over there and said, by the Spirit of the Lord, you need to leave my room, because you've already lost your position. When you went to try to take God's spot in heaven, you were kicked out. So now you're kicked out of my room at 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did this just come from? And I'm like, this is amazing, And so after that, like, she did not have a problem anymore going to the back of the house. I mean, in her room, nothing. And so that really opened my eyes a lot to really understanding her and what she's seeing. But for me too, because I'm not as so much as an emotional feeler,
Mhm.
That's something God's really been bringing me into the last couple of years to really just have an understanding of it. Like, I don't happen to me a lot, but now
Mhm.
that I've been through it some, I can relate to it. So
Mhm.
with my daughter, who's very emotional, can feel stuff. So when she
Mm-hmm.
just all of a sudden her behavior changes outside of her norm because I know her. So when I see something shift, I know something. Okay, something's not right.
Mhm.
So then I can start asking the right questions to help lead her and
Yeah.
allow wisdom for me to teach her what's happening.
So therefore, you see the symptom, but you don't deal with the symptom. The symptom becomes a key to you that there's some cause, there's something going on,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just try and, maybe discipline the symptom. You're looking for the cause. So you've got that
Absolutely.
connection, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
And one last thing, just real fast. I remember my daughter used to watch movies. There was one movie,
Yeah.
and it would have a song in it, and she would sing the song with the movie. And then, like, for 5 days, she went into straight rebellion, screaming, wouldn't listen. I mean, just all over the place. And I was like,
Hmm.
Lord, what do I do? And he's like, I want you to sit down on the floor and open your arms up. So I just sat down on the floor, opened my arms out. I was like, come here, sweetheart. No. And she would just hide behind the bed. I was like, hey, come here, come see me. And then after about 5 times, she'd run over there and just hug me. And I did
Hmm.
that for like days and days. And then finally, the Lord's like, hey, do you hear that? Because she was watching the movie and I was in the kitchen. I'm like, do you hear that? I'm like, what is it? So I listened and I heard the song, and it was about an unbreakable horse in rebellion. He was an unbreakable spirit. And I
Hmm.
was listening to the song. She was then singing this rebellion over herself. And so
Yeah.
after
Mm-hmm.
that, we dealt with that and it went away. I didn't have any trouble with that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's cool. That's a
Mm-hmm.
really good testimony. Daniel.
Yeah, so my youngest, still watching on that one. I'm sure something will pop up, but I have one like me and one like Corey. So my oldest is everything has to be in order,
Hmm.
and he's a little bit quieter. He notices things, I'll pay attention with people especially. You think, he won't talk to them or shake their hands and things. But we'll find out days later he'll start talking about somebody and he can just tell you all this information about them, and you're just like, where did you get that? Like, how do you know all this stuff about them? So that, that's with him. And with him, we haven't really dealt with the emotional part as much, and some stuff, of course there's that there, but my youngest boy, yes, he's you look at him wrong and he collapses on the floor and starts crying. So he's definitely got the emotional side. And with him, he sees a little more in the natural. With his eyes, we had to deal with actually. So for a while, he'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming, kind of like what Corey's talking about. And of course, me being a feeler, I could feel the atmosphere. I knew there was something wrong in the house. And so we dealt with that. And then what actually happened, a learning point for me actually, was that he would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and I would go into his room, but I couldn't feel. I had no, my discernment was not telling me there was anything wrong in the house or any of that. And so, talking to a couple peers, somebody made the comment that, in the Bible, it talks about that, an angel would come to people, and the first thing they would say is, "Fear not."
Hmm.
Obviously, we know that there was fear. People actually trembled. We can read stories of people trembling before the angels and stuff. And so, really started kind of pressing into it, asking my little boy questions, and found out that he was actually seeing big people that were glowing white in his room. And so we started explaining what angels were to him and stuff like that. And occasionally he still makes mention of it, but he no longer, we haven't really had to deal with any of the night terrors, waking up in the middle of the night or anything like that. And so anyway, that's kind of what's
Yeah. That's
going on
cool.
at our place.
So we've talked about some of the challenges in being able to see, and some
Hmm.
of the difficulties from growing up and those sorts of things. What would you say are the blessings, the things that you're so blessed about that God has given you this ability? What blesses you?
Mm, there's a lot of things. So for me, I would start out one with, um, I love the way that Father has given me the ability to prophesy different because of the way I see. Um, because I see people's emotions, I see their pain and things like that. I'm able to, I feel that I'm able to be much more sensitive with the way I deliver prophetic words, more from the heart of the Father, the heart of the matter, than just a cut and dry. This is what the Lord said, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I'm just saying, I love that I get to get into the hearts of people. I get to feel it with them. It's blessed me to get to cry with people, feel their pain, not just sit there and be like, I understand, but to actually be able to tell people, I know what you're feeling. Like,
Mhm.
I can see it. And so I mean,
Yep.
yeah, that would be one of them.
Well, we can come back to some more of that. Corey, what about you?
For me, would being able to see one, it gives me a deeper understanding of the Father, right, relationally with Him, and
Mhm.
how to access places that I normally didn't know before, right, without the understanding of what it is, and to be able to have those engagements with Him and understand His heart and be able to see in that place and go to that place. I think is such a wonderful blessing for my heart and a transformation of my heart. And the second thing was to be able to partner with them to deliver
Mhm.
wisdom and understanding to people, as they're searching for something, and they're like just that point where like, I just need something,
Mhm.
and I'm there with the Father to be like, hey, I have something to give to you. Kind of just like if we were generosity, right? If we were to give, and so that exchange that we get that satisfies our heart and our soul is kind of the same way with delivering that word or that process or whatever it may be, to see them
Mhm.
transform. I mean, that's for me the most deepest thing that I get.
So if you were talking to somebody today and they were just discovering that they were a seer, or they had this ability, like, and maybe they've heard you talk today and say, "Oh, that's me,"
Hmm.
what would you say to them? I mean, there's a general question. I know, that, like, the specifics, but what would you say that you've learned that could really be helpful?
I think the most helpful thing for me that I would tell everybody is to question everything, like to start paying attention, because um, once you realize you're a seer, there's so much relief in understanding what you're seeing. And what I mean by that, I guess, is I'm saying, like, when you have anger, sadness, all the different emotions, or you see something you don't like, or fear, or these things, to stop and question all that. Why am I fearing? Well, why am I um, fearful right now? Why am I? Because so often, we talk about the truth will set you free. So often when we understand what's going on, we're no longer under that thing. It's like, I don't react from fear because I understand it's not my fear. It's fear of, the person that are around me, or
Mhm.
the atmosphere that's around me. So that'd be my advice, is just
So
to start paying attention.
so what you're saying is it's pretty easy to take ownership of something that somebody else is,
Hmm.
and then take it on yourself. And what you're
Hmm.
saying is that you should ask questions when you have these sort of feelings come. Whose is this, or why that? Is that what you? Am I?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, I mean,
Yeah.
and then really, you need to find a peer you can talk to, somebody you can talk to, because so often when you talk it out with somebody, that's part of relationship that's really good for a seer. Find somebody who knows you, get to know them, let them get to know you, and then they'll tell you, Corey and you both have been a part of my life where something is going on, and you're just like, hey, come over here for a second, we need to talk, and you're just like, this isn't you. I know you. This isn't you, and I'm just like, wow. Yeah, okay, that clicked. You're right. What is it? And then it completely changes. Um,
Yeah.
once I don't take ownership of what I feel or see, because it's not meant for me. Uh, you
Yeah.
know.
We learned that lesson
Yeah, I've
pretty
been thinking
significant,
about that.
didn't we, when we were in California and we went into
Well,
San Francisco?
on
Oh
Halloween.
my
Come on.
goodness.
on Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we didn't. Yeah, we definitely didn't think. Well, I wouldn't say we didn't think it through, but we didn't know. I remember it was the end of the day. We're like, wait a second, it's Halloween, and see, that's a good one right there, Mark, because you called your wife, and she was the one, was like, Mark, this isn't normal for you guys. Something's wrong, and that's when it clicked with
Yep,
you. You were like, oh,
yep,
Annette, like, you're right, like, and then
yep.
we were able to come to grounds on it.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Mhm.
what it did was it separated, isn't we were all disconnected, we were like in
Antagonistic,
a
we were,
antagonistic. Yeah, we were liking each other.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about that was coming out the other side, though, when we came to understand what was going on, and we really broke that by communion, and we broke that by
Mm-hmm.
what we like about each other, what we loved about each other, and we started to reconnect, and then after that, we were taking communion every night, and it just
Mm-hmm.
broke something, didn't it?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So Corey, what would you say?
I would say when in the beginning process, if it brings pressure, to be like, whoa, slow down. Um, don't let it build pressure around you when you start seeing it's like, oh no, like, all right, what I, so
Mm-hmm.
I would just say
Yeah.
no, like don't entertain that. Stay at peace. So if it's not in peace, I would slow down and wait. Um, because and just from experience in that sense. And the other thing that I can't even think now, but that was a big thing for me. It's just pressure. Don't let it bring a bunch of pressure. You have to do something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that
Yeah.
if I remember the other thing, but yeah.
Yeah, do you guys feel like one of the things that we've talked a number of times on this life of a seer
Mm-hmm.
is being misunderstood. Do you guys ever felt that you've been misunderstood?
Oh man, that's like everywhere I go. Like really, that's the truth. Corey will know. He spends a lot of time. I mean, you would know too, Mark. It's just yeah, and I would say that everywhere. Like it's not a discouraging word at all, but I feel like the place I'm most misunderstood is at church. I thought, and not to discourage going to church. I'm just saying, I think I would tell people that might be the place when if you really realize you're a seer and you start seeing some things, that's a place to just, submit to the Father and be like,
Yep.
so, but yeah, it's
Corey?
conversations can be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say a long time ago I was very misunderstood, and I kept asking the Father, I was like, why is that the case? And for me, that was I was actually so focused on myself.
Hmm.
I had
Mm-hmm.
something and it needed to be done versus, okay, Lord, you showed me something. Who am I standing before? How do
Hmm.
they interpret? How show me who they are, so whenever I have wisdom, I can speak to them and relate and
Hmm.
have those things that connect to their heart in a way that they may grasp the analogy or whatever it is. And once that started translating over, I actually had a lot more connection with people, whereas at first
Yeah.
it didn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming to a time now where we're going to wrap up this time, and I really appreciate you guys, coming on and spending this time with me, because I know that you've said so many things that are going to really impact people and are going to bless people, and show people some things that you've learned. You've really done a lot of teaching in your sharing. Is there anything that you feel like you want to pray over or impart? I mean, no pressure if there's not. I mean, I'm not trying to make something happen, but is there anything that you feel like you want to say to anybody that's listening, as we come to a conclusion?
I from The only thing that I can think of is when you have the initial, you see it, feel it. Um, your initial interpretation of it probably don't always operate off of that one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but allow the Father to confirm, especially in the beginning, to confirm what you're seeing or when. Um, so
Yep. Yep. That's good. Thanks, Corey. Daniel?
Yeah, I just I don't know, I just want to release just a word of encouragement for those who might feel misunderstood. That I think there's a truth that we're all uniquely made and we're all unique. And so I think that's the thing is we live in a society where we're told fit in, look like
Mm-hmm.
this, look like that. Whereas the Father said He made us all unique, not to necessarily fit in, but to be one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just encourage, like it's okay to be a little different.
Yep.
And just people who are listening, just to call forth the gift, understanding of the gift that they would understand um,
Mm-hmm.
just what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
that it would get stronger, show itself, and they would know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I feel like there's a lot of we're in a time where I think a lot of people, this is a gift a lot of people are being given by the Father, because it's to see is able to get the truth, to see what's good and what is not.
Yep.
And so anyway, I just that
Yep.
encouragement.
One of the things that we've been targeting that really felt the Lord talk about was bringing freedom to people from shame. Because
Yeah.
I think people with all sorts of intentions, good intentions, can have the effect of taking people into feeling ashamed because they behave in this particular way, or they
Mm-hmm.
see things, they're not fitting into the normal aspect of it. And anybody who is operating as a seer knows that they're anything but normal,
Mm-hmm.
according to what the expectation of a lot of people around about them. Yet they are very normal for who God has made them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so dealing with that shame, and particularly we've talked about Isaiah 61, where it says that God will take your shame, or take the shame of people, and turn it into double honor.
Mm-hmm.
And He will take the confusion, and there's a lot of confusion in people's thinking, about who I am, and why am I seeing these things, feeling these things, and all of those sorts of things that can take place. But that's something that I wanted to keep declaring today, that the heart of the Father, the ability of the Father, is to take shame that has been put upon people and turn it into double honor, and to take confusion, a confused
Mm-hmm.
mind, and bring a clarity of thought, and bring that into a place of being able to rejoice for what you're. And I want to leave that with people today. I want to say that it's such a delight with have you guys here. It's such a delight to be able to speak to seers, whether you're listening right now or whether you are listening on one of the podcasts. You can find this and other episodes that we've done on any of the podcasting streams. You can actually see it there. You can go to insightnow.co, co, insightnow.co. You'll find us there, or find us on Facebook. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back. And Malvina will be joining me, and we'll be talking about a different aspect of life as a seer. Corey, thanks for joining us. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hanging out with you and just talking about some of the sorts of things. It's been a huge delight to see both of you growing and developing into this, and the best is yet to come. In Corinthians it says, eyes have not seen, right? Ears have not heard, nor has entered in the heart of man the things that God has got stored up for you, the things that are in you. And I know you've seen a lot. I know you've heard a lot. I know you've understood a lot, but you ain't seen anything yet. And that's for you guys, and that's for everybody listening. You ain't seen anything yet, because we're heading into this is a significant decade that we're in, because there's been such opposition to this decade, unlike any other time. Such challenges, such things going on, and we're stepping into the most significant decade that the kingdom has ever seen, or is on this earth has ever seen. And so, there's lots of things that Father's going to take you guys into.
Yeah, I think it's time to start seeing from the imagination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
All right, so blessings, you guys. Again, thanks for joining us. And we'll be on in 2 weeks' time, same time. That's 5 p.m. Pacific time, or wherever that is in your time zones. For Australia, that's on a Wednesday, and for Australia, it's Thursday at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So there you go. So guys, blessings. Again, thanks for hanging out, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Malvina will be back, I'm sure. Okay, thanks, guys.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.